You will beg for mercy!
The red fluid on my knuckles wasn't mine, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't apologize for it. I stood in the parking lot of Altspire Technologies, watching Trent Callahan struggle to his feet beside the overturned buffet table. Corporate executives in their pressed suits scattered like roaches when you flip on the kitchen light. My wife Allison screamed something at me, but the ringing in my ears drowned out her words. All I could hear was the echo of what I'd overheard 30 minutes earlier. Clay's just safe. He's never been a man who could scare me. Well, sweetheart, look at me now. But let me back up. This story doesn't start with violence. It starts with a maintenance supervisor named Clay Turner, who believed in loyalty, hard work, and keeping his mouth shut. A man who fixed broken things for a living and thought he could fix his broken marriage the same way. I was wrong about a lot of things. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been elbow deep in the guts of a conveyor belt at Midwest Distribution, wrestling with a seized bearing that had shut down Line 7 for the third time that month. The factory floor was a symphony of grinding metal and shouting voices, but I found peace in the mechanical problems. Machines were honest. When they broke, they told you exactly what was wrong, unlike people. My phone buzzed against my hip. A text from Allison. "Company retreat tonight. Spouses invited. Wear something nice." I stared at the message, grease under my fingernails, coveralls stained with hydraulic fluid. Allison's world of corporate consulting and mine of industrial maintenance had drifted so far apart that we might as well have been living on different planets. But she'd asked me to come, and I still believed that meant something. "Turner!" Max Rodriguez's voice cut through the factory noise. My shift supervisor jogged over, his weathered face creased with concern. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes." "Just thinking about putting on a suit," I muttered, tightening the bearing housing. Max laughed, but it was hollow. "Let me guess. Another one of Allison's fancy corporate things?" "Company retreat. Spouses invited." Jesus, Clay. You know what those things are, right? Pissing contests in conference rooms, rich people pretending they're changing the world while they figure out new ways to screw the little guy. I wiped my hands on a rag, avoiding his eyes. Max had been my best friend since high school, and he'd never liked Allison. Not since she'd started climbing the corporate ladder 5 years ago and looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "She wants me there," I said. "She wants you there as a prop, brother, to show her work friends she's got a nice, stable husband waiting at home while she plays power games with the suits." The bearing clicked into place with a satisfying snap. I wished everything in life was that simple. That evening, I stood in our bedroom mirror, fumbling with a tie I hadn't worn in months. The house we'd bought 15 years ago felt like a museum of better times. Wedding photos on the dresser, Riley's school pictures arranged in chronological order, family vacation snapshots that looked like they belonged to strangers. "You look fine," Allison said from the bathroom doorway. She'd transformed herself into something sleek and professional, her blonde hair pulled back in a way that made her cheekbones sharp as knives. The black dress she wore cost more than I made in a week. "Just fine?" I asked, attempting a smile. She was already checking her phone. "We need to leave in 10 minutes. And Clay, try not to talk shop tonight. These people don't want to hear about conveyor belts and hydraulic systems." The drive to Altspire Technologies took us through the newer part of town, where glass towers reflected the setting sun like mirrors. I'd driven past this building 100 times, but never been inside. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with abstract art that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Clay Turner," I told the receptionist, a young woman with perfect teeth and dead eyes. "I'm with Allison Turner from Strategic Solutions." She handed me a badge that read "Guest" in red letters. I clipped it to my jacket pocket and followed the crowd toward the elevator banks. The corporate retreat was held in a ballroom on the 15th floor. 200 people in expensive clothes making small talk over wine and catered appetizers. I recognized the type from television, confident, aggressive, speaking in acronyms and buzzwords that meant nothing to anyone who actually worked for a living. I found Allison near the bar, laughing at something a tall man in a navy suit was saying. He had the kind of perfect hair that suggested regular salon visits and the easy confidence of someone who'd never wondered where his next paycheck was coming from. "Clay!" Allison's voice was bright and artificial. "Come meet Trent Callahan. He's the Director of Strategic Development." Trent extended his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His grip was firm, probably practiced in some executive training course. So, you're the husband I've heard so much about. Allison tells me you work in maintenance. The way he said it made it sound like a disease. Industrial maintenance, I corrected. I keep the machines running that move the products that keep the economy going. How essential, Trent said, his smile widening. I imagine that's very hands-on work. Allison laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Clay's being modest. He's actually a supervisor. He manages a whole team of maintenance technicians. The conversation continued around me, but I found myself studying Trent's face, the way he looked at my wife, the way she looked back, the familiar ease between them that spoke of conversations I hadn't been part of, jokes I hadn't heard, moments I hadn't shared. During dinner, I sat at a table with Allison's colleagues, listening to them discuss market penetration strategies and synergistic opportunities. Trent was 2 seats away, holding court with stories about his latest acquisition deal. Every few minutes, he'd catch Allison's eye across the table, and she'd smile in a way I hadn't seen in months. So, Clay, said a woman named Janet, her voice cutting through my thoughts, what do you think about the automation trends in manufacturing? Are you worried about job security? The table fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for the blue-collar guy to say something stupid they could laugh about later. Automation's been coming for 30 years, I said carefully, but machines still break down. They still need people who understand how they work, how to fix them when they fail. The trick is staying ahead of the curve. That's a very optimistic perspective, Trent said, twirling his wine glass. Though I suspect most manufacturing jobs will be obsolete within the decade, progress waits for no one. Easy to say when your job involves moving money around on spreadsheets, I replied. The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Allison's face went pale. Clay, she said quietly, maybe we should— No, it's fine, Trent interrupted, his smile turning predatory. I find it fascinating to meet someone so grounded in traditional work. Tell me, do you ever feel left behind by the modern economy? Do you ever wonder what it would be like to work with your mind instead of your hands? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel the other diners watching, waiting for my response. In that moment, I realized I was entertainment for them. The working-class husband brought out for their amusement. I work with my mind every day, I said, keeping my voice level. The difference is, when I solve a problem, something actually gets built. When I fix something, it stays fixed. How wonderfully concrete, Trent said. I imagine that must be very satisfying for someone with your skill set. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Excuse me, I need some air. I walked out of the ballroom, past the elevator banks, and found a small balcony overlooking the parking lot. The night air was cool against my face, and I could hear the distant hum of traffic from the interstate. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. That's when I heard the voices. God, I felt so bad for him, Allison was saying. She was standing just inside the balcony door with another woman, someone I recognized as her assistant. Did you see his face when Trent was talking about automation? I thought he was going to cry. Your husband seems intense, the assistant replied. Clay's just safe, Allison said, and I heard something in her voice I'd never heard before. Contempt. He's never been a man who could scare me. He's never been a man who could surprise me. Trent? He's a man. The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the wall, listening to my wife dissect our marriage for the entertainment of her colleague. Are you sure about this? The assistant asked. I mean, you've been married for 15 years. You have Riley to think about. Riley's 17. She'll be in college next year. And honestly, she's already chosen sides. She thinks Clay's holding me back, too. What about the house? The divorce? Clay would never fight me on anything, Allison said with certainty. He's too passive, too defeated. He'll sign whatever papers I put in front of him. I heard the click of heels on marble as they walked away, leaving me alone with the truth. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to discard me like a broken appliance, confident that I'd accept it with the same quiet resignation I'd shown for everything else. She was wrong. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Riley's car was gone, probably at her boyfriend's place. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator covered with family photos and appointment cards, and tried to process what I'd heard. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. Instead of going to the plant, I drove to the public library and spent 3 hours researching divorce laws, asset division, and evidence collection. I learned about no-fault divorces, marital property, and something called dissipation of assets. Most importantly, I learned that in cases of infidelity, the courts could award larger portions of shared assets to the innocent spouse. But I needed proof. That evening, I suggested to Allison that we install a security system. With all the break-ins in the neighborhood, I said, I'd feel better knowing you're safe when I'm working nights. She agreed readily, probably thinking it was another example of my overprotective nature. What she didn't know was that I'd chosen a system that included audio recording capabilities in the main living areas. 2 weeks later, I had everything I needed. I'd recorded her phone conversations with Trent, planning their next hotel meeting. I'd documented her lies about working late, her sudden need for business trips, her new lingerie purchases that she claimed were for confidence building. I'd even managed to access her laptop while she was showering, finding months of explicit text messages and photos I wished I'd never seen. The picture that broke me was simple. Allison on a hotel bed, wearing nothing but a smile with Trent's girl written across her chest in red lipstick. I printed everything, made copies, stored them in a safe deposit box I'd opened at a bank across town. Then I sat in my basement workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planned my next move. The first call I made was to Jordan Kim, a woman I'd known in high school who'd gone on to become a private investigator. We hadn't spoken in 20 years, but she remembered me. Clay Turner, she said when I identified myself. I heard you married Allison Parker. How's that working out for you? It's not, I admitted. I need help. We met at a coffee shop downtown, a place where neither of us was likely to be recognized. Jordan had aged well, her black hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. She listened without interruption as I explained the situation. You're not the first guy to get blindsided by a corporate-climbing wife, she said when I finished. But you might be the first one who came prepared. Show me what you've got. I slid a folder across the table. Jordan opened it, scanning the printed emails and photographs with professional detachment. This is good work, she said finally. Thorough, legal, admissible in court. You could take her for 60% of the assets with this evidence. That's not enough. Jordan looked up from the folder. What do you mean? I don't just want to win the divorce. I want to destroy them, both of them. I want Trent to lose his job, his reputation, his future. I want Allison to understand what it feels like to be discarded. Clay, I run a professional investigation service. I don't do revenge. I'm not asking you to do revenge. I'm asking you to help me do it right, legally, completely. Jordan studied my face for a long moment. What happened to the guy who would never hurt a fly? He found out his wife thought he was pathetic. He found out his daughter agreed with her. He found out that being a good man just makes you a target. And now? Now I'm going to show them what a dangerous man looks like. Jordan closed the folder. I'll need a $5,000 retainer, and I want to be clear. Everything we do has to be legal. No breaking and entering, no maltreatment, no threats. We destroy them with the truth. Done. The plan Jordan developed was elegant in its simplicity. Phase 1, document everything. Phase 2, strategic exposure. Phase 3, legal action. Phase 4, social and professional consequences. We started with Trent. Jordan's research revealed that Trent's success at Altspire was built on a foundation of lies. He'd inflated his credentials, claimed credit for deals he hadn't closed, and was currently embezzling money from the company's client expense accounts. Even better, he was married to Sarah Callahan, a woman who'd inherited a small fortune from her father and funded Trent's lifestyle. He's a con man, Jordan explained during one of our weekly meetings. A smooth-talking fraud who's been skating by on charm and other people's money. All we have to do is pull the curtain back. The first crack in Trent's armor came when Jordan sent an anonymous tip to Altspire's compliance department about irregularities in the strategic development budget. The investigation that followed revealed thousands of dollars in fraudulent expense claims. The second crack came when Jordan leaked information about Trent's fabricated resume to a business reporter who specialized in corporate corruption. The story ran in the regional business journal under the headline, Altspire Executives' Credentials Questioned. The third crack came when Sarah Callahan received a package containing photos of her husband with my wife. I was working late at the plant when Jordan called with the news. It's done, she said. Trent's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Sarah filed for divorce this morning and froze all their joint accounts. Your wife's been questioned by HR about her relationship with a suspended employee. How's she taking it? According to my source at Altspire, she's been locked in her office, crying for 3 hours. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Phase 2, complete. Clay, are you sure you want to keep going? You've got everything you need for the divorce. Trent's career is over. Allison's reputation is damaged. Maybe it's time to... No, I said. We're not done. That night, I came home to find Allison waiting in the living room, her face red and blotchy from crying. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. We need to talk, she said. About what? About us. About... What happened? I sat down in my chair, the same chair I'd occupied for 15 years of marriage, and looked at her. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still polished, but there was something desperate in her eyes. What happened, Allison? I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Trent. He made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. But it's over now. He's gone. I want to work on us. Work on us? I know you're hurt. I know you're angry. But we can get through this. We can go to counseling. We can... Tell me about the basement agreement, I said. Her face went white. What? The basement agreement. The one where you and Trent planned to wait until Riley graduated, then divorce me and take half of everything while you two started your new life together. I don't know what you're talking about. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a printed email. Should I read it to you? Clay will never fight back. He's too weak. We just need to be patient until Riley's in college. Then we can be together openly. Allison's hands were shaking. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you thought I was weak. You thought I was pathetic. You thought I'd just roll over and accept being discarded. Clay, please. I was confused. I was saying things I didn't mean. You meant every word. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where we'd lived for 15 years. Tomorrow, you're going to be served with divorce papers. You're going to be asked to leave this house. Your belongings will be packed and waiting on the front porch. You can't do this. This is my house, too. Actually, I can. Infidelity is grounds for immediate separation in this state. The mortgage is in my name. The deed is in my name. You signed a postnup 5 years ago when you started making more money, remember? You insisted on it to protect your income. That was to protect both of us. No, that was to protect you. Turns out it protected me instead. Allison was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. What about Riley? What about our daughter? Riley made her choice. She chose you. She can live with the consequences. I walked toward the stairs, then paused. Oh, and Allison, the security system I installed, it's been recording everything, every conversation, every phone call, every lie. My lawyer has copies of everything. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Allison tried to fight, hiring an expensive attorney who specialized in high-asset divorces. But the evidence was overwhelming. The infidelity, the planning, the attempt to defraud me of marital assets, it all painted a picture of a woman who'd systematically betrayed her husband while plotting to destroy him financially. Riley chose to live with her mother in the apartment Allison had rented across town. The last conversation I had with my daughter was brief and devastating. I hate you, she said, standing in the doorway of what had been her room. You destroyed our family. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. Mom made one mistake. One. And you're making her pay for it forever. One mistake? Riley, your mother was planning to divorce me for over a year. She was stealing money from our joint accounts to fund her affair. She was telling her friends that I was pathetic, that you thought I was holding her back. She never said that. I handed her a printed transcript of one of the recorded conversations. Riley read it, her face growing pale. This doesn't change anything, she said finally. You could have forgiven her. You could have worked it out. Instead, you chose revenge. I chose consequences. There's a difference. I'll never forgive you for this. I know. After she left, I sat in the empty house and waited to feel something. Remorse, sadness, regret. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. For the first time in my marriage, I'd acted instead of reacted. I'd fought back instead of accepting defeat. The final act came 6 months later. I was at Max's house, helping him work on his motorcycle, when he brought up the subject I'd been avoiding. "You know people are talking about you, right?" he said, not looking up from the engine. "About what you did to Allison and that executive. Let them talk. They're saying you went too far, that you were cruel." "Were they saying I was cruel when she was laughing about me with her boyfriend? Were they saying I was cruel when she was planning to take half of everything I'd worked for?" Max finally looked up. "They're saying you changed, that you're not the same guy." "They're right, I'm not." "Clay, I've known you for 25 years. You're not a vengeful person. You're not someone who destroys people." I wasn't. But maybe I should have been. That evening, I drove to the Altspire building one last time. The security guard recognized me and waved me through to the parking garage. I parked near the elevator bank and waited. Trent appeared 20 minutes later, looking nothing like the confident executive I'd met at the company retreat. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He'd lost weight, and there was a tremor in his hands that suggested he'd been drinking. I got out of my car and walked over to him. He looked up, startled. "Clay, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see how you were doing." "How I'm doing?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm unemployed. My wife divorced me and took everything. I'm living in a studio apartment and driving a car that barely runs. How do you think I'm doing?" "I think you're getting what you deserve." "What I deserve? For what? For falling in love? For being a liar? For being a cheat? For thinking you could destroy someone's life without consequences?" Trent's face darkened. "You self-righteous fool. You think you're better than me? You think you're some kind of hero?" "I don't think I'm a hero. I think I'm a man who learned to fight back." "You want to fight?" Trent stepped closer, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You want to finish what you started at the company party?" "I already finished it. You destroyed everything, my career, my marriage, my life. You couldn't just let it go. You had to make sure everyone knew." "Everyone should know. They should know you're a fraud. They should know you're a liar. They should know what happens when you try to destroy someone who's stronger than you thought." Trent swung at me, a wild, drunken punch that I easily avoided. He stumbled, caught himself against his car, and swung again. This time I grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and pressed him against the hood. "Do you know what the difference is between you and me?" I said quietly. "You thought being weak was about being quiet, being passive, being nice, but real weakness is thinking you can take whatever you want from people without consequences." I released him and stepped back. Trent turned around, rubbing his wrist, his face flushed with humiliation. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched Trent stand alone in the parking garage, a broken man in a broken life, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The story should have ended there, but life has a way of providing unexpected epilogues. A year later, I was at the grocery store when I saw Allison in the produce section. She looked older, tired, wearing clothes that suggested her income had taken a significant hit. She saw me coming and froze. Clay, Allison. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd once shared everything, now strangers in a fluorescent-lit supermarket. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm good. You?" "I'm surviving. I got a job at a marketing firm. The pay's not great, but it's honest work." "That's good." "Riley's doing well in college. She's studying business. She asks about you sometimes." "What do you tell her?" "That you're a good man who got hurt and did what he thought was right." I studied her face, looking for deception, for manipulation, for any sign of the woman who'd betrayed me. But all I saw was someone who'd learned the same lesson I had. Actions have consequences. "I want you to know," she said, "that I'm sorry for everything, for what I did to you, to us, to our family. I know you'll never forgive me, but I needed to say it." "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. "But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. I know. Good luck, Allison." "Good luck, Clay." I walked away, leaving her standing among the apples and oranges, a woman who'd learned too late that some things, once broken, can never be fixed. Outside, the sun was setting over the parking lot, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. I got in my truck, a new one I'd bought with my share of the divorce settlement, and drove home to the house I'd fought to keep. The basement workshop was exactly as I'd left it, tools organized on pegboards, workbench clear and ready. I'd spent countless hours down there over the years, fixing things, building things, solving problems that had clear solutions. I sat at the workbench and opened the folder I'd kept in the safe. Photos, documents, transcripts, the evidence of betrayal, and the proof of consequences. I fed everything into the paper shredder, watching 15 years of marriage and a year of revenge disappear into confetti. When it was done, I turned off the lights and went upstairs. Tomorrow I'd go back to work. I'd fix broken machines, solve mechanical problems, and go home to a quiet house that belonged only to me. Some people might call that a hollow victory. They might say I'd won the war but lost my soul, but they'd be wrong. I hadn't lost anything. I'd simply learned what I should have known all along, that being good doesn't mean being weak, and that sometimes the only way to stop being a sufferer is to become something else entirely. The man who'd stood in that corporate ballroom, humiliated and dismissed, was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, more dangerous. Someone who understood that the world was full of people who would take everything from you if you let them. I'd learned to not let them.